So here's a very valid question. Love to know your thoughts, really, because we haven't really discussed it. Eargate. What are your thoughts? Because that pad, some people are saying Melania has lent him a supersized pad. Other people are saying it's like a diaper being used in, well, maybe it's used elsewhere. But all joking apart, what do you think? Because how come no medical report has been produced? And that's not minimising what happened. The attack was appalling, right? But is there something going on now that we don't really know too much about? Because, as I say, there is no medical report, there's no doctor's report, nothing. Instead, we just see this huge pad. Is that pad being used for what I would say a dramatic effect? Because you know, the former president, everything is a reality show. Everything's about figures, viewing figures and attention. Do you think, sort of thing with Ari Malver, that it is a fake pad and his injury is not as severe? That's not to say he couldn't have been injured, but let's go with where we are now. Thoughts?
Day 3 of the Republican National Convention. Last night, former President Donald Trump made his second appearance following Saturday's assassination attempt. And I'm joined now by Eric Trump, son of the former president and head of the Trump Organization, to dig into what we saw last evening. I want to start with your father, who's in that box right near us here. How's he doing emotionally? And also, we saw the bandage again. How severe was that injury?
Yeah. The same time you get shot in the ear, it's severe. Yeah. You know, this isn't fun. He always said it was the greatest earache he's ever had, and it was far too close. I would say should have never have happened. You know, he was millimeters away from having his life expunged because of a madman. But I'm sure the ear doesn't feel well. He's a trooper. He's out here. He's a great spirits as person. Yeah. He sees the love in this room and the love all across the country right now. I'm not sure, and I've been in politics for a very, very long time. I'm not sure if I've ever felt love the way we feel love at this moment. And you've certainly seen it echo through the halls of this place. Some of that love came in the form of people wearing patches on their ears, sort of in honor of your father. And people are really curious. Does he have stitches under there? Yeah, no stitches, but certainly a nice flesh wound. And I know it's crazy. I never would have thought I'd be sitting there on a couch with my two children watching my father almost get assassinated on live TV. But again, he's in great spirits. He's determined as ever. I think he's changed his speech. He even, has publicly said, hey, it went from a much tougher speech, really prosecuting the administration for a lot of failures, for every failure that we know about that our country's going through right now, to a very unifying speech. And I'm proud of that. I think this country needs a lot of unity, and it needs a lot of civility, and it needs love. I mean, the reason we're here, the reason we do what we do as a family, we don't need to be doing this. We do it for love of country. Yeah. And the country's going in a horrible direction, and he wants to fix that. He wants to make America great again. And that's why we're here, for no other reason. Yeah, speaking of the family, there's a lot of eyes on this box near us, the family box, friends of the family as well. Who's in, who's not in. We haven't seen Melania, the former First Lady, and we haven't seen Ivanka. Yeah. How are they? Where are they? They're coming in, and they're coming in full force and effect. So they'll certainly be here. Ivanka's been an incredible supporter of my father. I think you know that. She's in the White House for a 4-year period of time and loves him dearly, and obviously Melania as well. And listen, there's no family, I don't think, in political history that's remained closer than our family. You see myself on the stage every single day. You see Don on the stage every single day. You saw what my wife did last night in prime time. I mean, they've done everything to try and destroy this family. They've done everything they could to try and break up this family, to separate this family in so many ways with the ruthless attacks. And we are a family that's cohesive. We are a family that absolutely supports him, that absolutely loves him to death. And I'm honored to stand on that stage. In fact, I'll be standing on that stage pretty much right before him on Thursday night. Well, then this is a nice follow-up question. Will you be following him into the White House? He did not have a job in the White House last administration. What do you want to do this time within the administration? Listen, I love our company. I made that very clear in 2016, and I have no intent to go into the White House. If he ever asked me to come do something, I would. But I really have no intent to go into the White House. You love your company. The New York court system not loving your company right now. You have a huge civil fraud fine. You might have to step aside from that position if the appeals process doesn't work out. Where is that process, and have you given any thought to what else you might do? Yeah, well, the appellate court already tossed that out, so I won't have to step aside. And it's New York system's a sham, and we've seen it to be a sham. They've done everything they could to take down my father. You had an attorney general who ran on the notion of going into the attorney general's office, suing my father every single day and going home. We had our banks testify that they've never had better lenders. We've never missed a payment. We've never been in default of a loan. Boeing killed hundreds and hundreds of people with airplane crashes and negligence. They were fined $200 million. Donald Trump never missed a loan payment, never defaulted on a loan, paid back every loan early. And he was fined $530 million for doing absolutely nothing wrong by a corrupt judge. The New York system is a sham, and what I will say is I have faith in the appellate courts, and they will overturn the nonsense.
A lot of people in this room feel the same way. I want to bring us back to this room because your wife last night gave a 21-minute speech, many standing ovations in those 21 minutes.
Yeah.
Makes one think, who's the future of the Republican Party? Is it J.D. Vance or is it Laura Trump?
Well, I think they're probably both the future of the Republican Party. My wife is incredible. She did an amazing job last night. And J.D. Vance, I mean, listen, his success speaks for himself, and he's going to be an incredible vice president because we are going to win in November. But it's beautiful to see a young woman, a young mom on that stage in the Republican Party. It's exactly what the Republican Party needs. The Republican Party is changing.
They're both the ticket, is how Eric Trump puts it. That could be a preview of 2028, I think. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Good luck tonight and the next two nights.
And what else? Nikki Haley was kept talking about he needs to take a test.
Well, that's what she did say, but she changed her tune at the very last minute.
But Ron DeSantis was tougher on him, right?
Well,
because he said a lot of things.
Everyone all of a sudden changed.
Really?
Last night at the Republican National Convention, Donald Trump's final two challengers for the nomination took the stage, giving full endorsements to the former president, calling for unity within the party and a focus on President Biden.
We should acknowledge that there are some Americans who don't agree with Donald Trump 100% of the time. I happen to know some of them. And I want to speak to them tonight. My message to them is simple. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him. Take it from me, I haven't always agreed with President Trump. But we agree more often than we disagree.
We need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
Wait, didn't we have that with all that executive time and golfing? Was that what he was talking about?
Well, it's hard to say. I'm so confused by what they said in the primary and what they said last night. J.D. Vance, of course, will be talking tonight. He was the one, of course, John Heilman, who said that Christians shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. But tonight, of course, that will have all changed. He also said some extraordinarily intemperate things about him that actually people like J.D. Vance are now complaining about. So it is fascinating. But but Nikki Haley, somebody that basically said that Donald Trump is too old and addled to be president of the United States, now offering her strong endorsement.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, look, the people in your former party who, going back, we saw Ted Cruz and Little Marco last night too. Little Marco Rubio, who all said incredibly harsh things about Donald Trump. The last time there was a real Republican convention back in 2016, you remember Ted Cruz. There was a floor fight where Ted Cruz said some of the harshest things you can imagine about Donald Trump. This has been the story of the Trump era, right, where people who've been either publicly or privately critical of Donald Trump and said that he was disqualified or had disqualified from being president for one reason or the other, then turned around later and capitulated to him. So we've seen it for a long time. There's not anything really surprising about it. But I would say that in the case of Nikki Haley, it's really more egregious, I think, than almost anybody's, because she, even compared to Ron DeSantis said some critical things about Trump during the primary, but they were well within the bounds of what we have heard in both parties in nomination contests. Your people, Kamala Harris criticized Joe Biden back in 2020. But Nikki Haley was different. And you guys remember, I was out there with her in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, where her criticism of Trump got harsher and harsher and harsher. And we talked about it a lot on this show. Nikki Haley had found her voice. She was taking a stand. She was going as far, in some respects, as people in the Democratic Party were to say that Donald Trump was reporting the way that he behaved in a room with Vladimir Putin. She said things that were not merely critical, but that were the kinds of things that Democrats say about Donald Trump. And the question of what she was at heart was on the table. And I think there was always a school of thought, which was Ultimately, Nikki Haley's all about Nikki Haley. She wants a future in this party. Eventually, she will endorse him, people would say. And others would say, no, I think she's really changed. She's found her voice. Well, we found out last night who Nikki Haley really is.
So let's just go through some of these. I just looked at some old articles here, Caddy. Nikki Haley told the Wall Street Journal that electing Donald Trump would be, quote, suicide for our country. She called Donald Trump unhinged. She questioned Donald Trump's mental fitness and demanded that he take a cognitive test. And here are a couple of other highlights or lowlights of her campaign against Donald Trump.
Of course, many of the same politicians who now publicly embrace Trump privately dread him. They know what a disaster he's been and will continue to be for our party. Donald Trump can't win a general election.
Wow.
Caddy, it's almost like she's Karnak the magician, and she can like predict the future because she predicted her own future right there. After saying electing Donald Trump would be suicide for America, after saying he was unhinged, after saying he wasn't all there and he needed to take a cognitive test, that he was too old to be president of the United States, she said, you know, some Republicans will say this that worked for him quietly, but then they'll go on to support him. Nikki Haley? Meet Nikki Haley.
That February comment is the particularly telling one. It does represent, you know, everything we have heard over the last, however many years it's been, almost 8 years of Donald Trump. All these Republicans who seem to be afraid of him and have grown increasingly afraid of him because they think that if they don't get his endorsement, they won't be elected or re-elected. And Nikki Haley, you know, at the end of her campaign, we all noticed it, seemed to have become a much more agile political athlete, much more confident of her own voice. And we saw her there last night vaguely trying to thread the needle of saying, well, I don't actually always agree with him. I'm not one of those people who I criticized so roundly, who says one thing about Donald Trump but feels another one, because here I am saying that, you know, I don't always agree with him. But the astonishing thing about this Milwaukee convention is the way that Donald Trump has just managed to align the party under his vision and auspices. I don't know what percentage of people are there in Milwaukee who don't love Donald Trump, but I'm not sure that Nikki Haley really does represent the majority of the Republican Party anymore. They have fallen in lockstep with him. Now, of course, this is the crowd that adores him, but the people who are speaking one after another, maybe they don't like him in private, but you get no sense of that. This is a party that has fallen fully under Donald Trump's thumb.
Mike, you and I stood in New Hampshire on the eve of the primary there in a ballroom listening to Nikki Haley. And as John said, it's not unusual for candidates in a primary who criticize somebody to fall in line and support the nominee. But the criticism was not on policy. It was that Donald Trump is diminished. She compared him to Joe Biden, said that he's just not the same guy he was when I worked in the administration, said he had become more unhinged even than he was before. And the line she kept using over and over was, don't blame me come November if you nominate Donald Trump. He's going to lose to Joe Biden. Don't come crying to me. And now here she is on stage giving a full-throated endorsement last night at the convention.
You know, when she spoke that night, and we were there, as you indicated, in New Hampshire, I don't think she realized then, and probably still doesn't realize now, what an outlier she is within what used to be the Republican Party. I mean, the Republican Party, its brand is now Donald Trump, and has been, I think, for quite some time. And, Jonathan, you talk to people in Washington all the time. There has to be an awareness that this is not only unique in this century, it's unique maybe in American political history, that one individual, Donald J. Trump, has so managed to come in from the outside, from the business world, and completely co-opt, take over one of the two major political parties in the country.
He has taken over the party and he has completely reshaped it. Evidence of that, his running mate, J.D. Vance, who is now seen as sort of the MAGA heir apparent, very much of the Trump cloth. There was no effort to moderate here. There was no effort to appeal to a different part of the party. This is pure Trumpism, and we saw it on display. I mean, he is, of course, beloved there in Milwaukee, to the point where a couple dozen rally convention goers were seen with bandages on their ears to sort of pay tribute to Donald Trump and his wound that he suffered, what happened on Saturday. What I think is interesting about Haley, though, is we heard her say that, look, I disagree with some of Donald Trump, and she tried to create this permission structure. You can disagree with him, but still vote for him. But it wasn't that long ago. The Republican primaries, well after it was clear that Trump was going to be the nominee, there were still Republican primaries where a sizable percentage of voters, Republican voters, were still not voting for Donald Trump.
Right.
They were voting for Nikki Haley or making some sort of protest vote. And it's not clear if those voters will come to Trump. Some of them, during the primary process, seemed very open to President Biden. And even if Haley...
Where I am at this point is it's been 3 days going on 4 since this horrific event occurred. A person lost their life, 2 have been severely injured, and yet we've not received a medical report from the hospital, nor have we received a medical report from the campaign or from the Trump organization about the extent of the damage to his ear. If he was shot by a high caliber bullet, there should probably be very little ear there. And so we'd like to know that. Is there cosmetic surgery involved? What is the prognosis for recovery? Were there stitches? What is the extent and nature of the damage to his ear? Was it caused by a bullet, as opposed to, as some reports from those on the scene, other reporters, saying that it was actually shards of glass from the teleprompter itself, not the bullet. So there are a lot of questions around that ear, and yet there's been no response to that. Instead, just showing the image of the man